Good evening, chosen ones. I want to welcome each and every one of you with love, honor, and gratitude. No matter where you're watching from today, whether it's morning, afternoon, or late at night, I truly believe you are not here by accident. You didn't click on this message by coincidence. You were guided here for a reason. If you can hear my voice right now, then I want you to know that this message is for you. Take a deep breath, let go of the weight you've been carrying, and prepare your heart, because I believe something powerful is about to happen. Before we begin, I want you to do something for me. If you believe that God has been protecting you, even through battles you couldn't see, type "I am chosen" in the comments below. Let that declaration be your reminder that your identity is not determined by rejection, betrayal, or the opinions of people. Your identity is determined by the one who created you with purpose. And if you're part of this amazing family for the very first time, I want to personally welcome you. You are now among people who refuse to give up, who choose faith over fear, purpose over pain, and hope over despair. Go ahead and subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and become part of this growing community of chosen ones who are determined to grow stronger every single day. Chosen ones, I don't know what kind of week you've had. Maybe you've been fighting battles that nobody knows about. Maybe you've smiled in front of everyone while silently carrying pain in your heart. Maybe you've been misunderstood, overlooked, betrayed, or left wondering why certain doors suddenly closed. But I want to remind you of something today. Just because life feels difficult doesn't mean God has forgotten you. Sometimes the greatest preparation happens in the quietest seasons. Sometimes heaven is working behind the scenes while all you can see is the waiting. Never mistake God's silence for his absence. He is still writing your story, and every chapter has a purpose. I want you to remember this throughout today's message. The strongest people are not those who never cry. The strongest people are those who continue walking even after they've been hurt. They continue believing after disappointment. They continue loving after betrayal. They continue trusting God's plan even when they don't understand it. That is the spirit of a true chosen one. You were never called to have an easy life. You were called to become stronger because of every challenge you face. Have you ever wondered what it feels like when someone who walked away from you finally realizes they were never seeing the truth? Imagine carrying the weight of betrayal while the person who hurt you believed they were doing the right thing. They listened to the wrong voices, they trusted false stories, they accepted lies as facts. And because of that, they walked away from someone who was never their enemy. But listen carefully, because this message isn't about revenge, it's about revelation. It's about the moment when the fog disappears, when manipulation loses its grip, and when the truth arrives with a power that no lie can withstand. Some of you sitting here today have spent nights questioning your worth because someone you loved chose deception over trust. You wondered if you weren't enough. You wondered if you could have explained yourself better. But let me tell you something that can change your life forever. People who are manipulated don't see reality. They see the version of reality that someone else carefully created for them. Your value was never determined by their misunderstanding. Your character was never erased by their false perception. The truth doesn't stop existing simply because someone refuses to see it. And when the truth finally breaks through, it shakes every false belief they once held. That's why you must never build your future around proving yourself to people who have already chosen to believe a lie. Build your future around becoming stronger, wiser, and closer to your purpose, because when the truth finally reaches them, it will arrive without your permission, without your effort, and without your defense. Truth has a way of introducing itself when the timing is right. It doesn't need advertising. It doesn't need arguments. It simply appears, and suddenly, everything changes. Think about this for a moment. Manipulation is powerful only while darkness hides the facts. The manipulator knows they cannot win against the truth, so they work tirelessly to control the story. They isolate people, they plant doubt, they twist conversations, they create confusion where there was once peace. And sometimes, your ex wasn't strong enough to recognize the trap. They became convinced that leaving you was the smart decision. They believed they were protecting themselves when, in reality, they were walking away from someone who genuinely cared for them. But here's what manipulators can never control. They cannot stop time from exposing their lies. Every lie requires another lie to survive. Every deception creates cracks that eventually become impossible to hide. And one day your ex starts noticing those cracks. The stories stop adding up. The people they trusted begin contradicting themselves. Their own experiences start revealing a completely different reality. Suddenly they remember your kindness. They remember your patience. They remember the peace they once felt around you. They begin asking questions they were too blinded to ask before. And that's when the painful realization hits them. They weren't protecting themselves from you. They were manipulated into betraying someone who genuinely loved them. Imagine the weight of that realization. Imagine understanding that the person you blamed was actually innocent all along. That kind of truth doesn't just enter the mind, it shakes the soul. But while that realization belongs to them, your responsibility is not to wait for it. Your responsibility is to keep moving forward with dignity. Because your destiny cannot be paused while someone else catches up to reality. Some of you are still waiting for an apology that may never come. You're waiting for a message, a phone call, or a confession that says, "I was wrong." But let me challenge your thinking today. What if your greatest victory isn't hearing those words? What if your greatest victory is becoming so healed that you no longer need them? Because true freedom begins the moment your peace no longer depends on someone else's regret. Listen, life has a remarkable way of balancing the scales. People eventually experience what they once ignored. They eventually understand the value they once overlooked. Not because you forced them to see it, but because reality has a way of correcting false narratives. The truth is patient. It doesn't rush. It waits until every disguise falls apart. And when it arrives, it speaks louder than every accusation ever made against you. That's why you must never waste your energy trying to convince people who have already chosen confusion. Keep growing. Keep believing. Keep protecting your heart. Let your silence become stronger than your defense. Let your success become louder than your explanation. Let your character continue shining even when nobody applauds it. Because people can manipulate opinions, but they cannot manipulate your destiny when you remain faithful to your purpose. One day, the same people who doubted your heart will recognize its value. The same people who believed false stories will question why they ever believed them. And your ex may finally realize that the betrayal they committed wasn't based on truth. It was based on manipulation, fear, and deception. But by then, you won't be the same person they left behind. You will have grown beyond the pain. You will have discovered strength you never knew existed. You will understand that what felt like rejection was actually preparation for a greater chapter. So stand tall today. Refuse to let betrayal define your identity. Refuse to let someone else's misunderstanding become your life sentence. Your story is far bigger than one broken relationship. Your future is brighter than one painful goodbye. And always remember this, lies may run faster, but truth always reaches the finish line. When it does, every hidden motive is exposed, every false accusation loses its power, and every person manipulated by deception is forced to face reality. Let that reality belong to them, while your future belongs to purpose, peace, and unstoppable growth. The greatest comeback isn't making them regret losing you. The greatest comeback is becoming the person who no longer needs their validation, because you finally understand that your worth was never determined by the hands that let you go. It was always defined by the strength, courage, and purpose that carried you through the storm. And nothing, not betrayal, not manipulation, not rejection, can ever take that away from you. Have you ever noticed how quickly a person's perception can change when they are surrounded by the wrong voices. Think about that for a moment. One conversation can plant a seed of doubt. A second conversation can water that seed. A third conversation can make it grow into suspicion. Before long, someone who once trusted you begins questioning everything about you. Not because you've changed, but because someone else has carefully rewritten the story in their mind. That's the power of manipulation. It doesn't always arrive wearing the face of evil. It often comes disguised as concern, friendship, advice, or protection. It whispers instead of shouting. It suggests instead of commanding. It convinces people they are making their own decisions when, in reality, they are following a script someone else has written for them. And perhaps that is exactly what happened in your situation. Your ex may not have planned to betray you. They may not have woken up one morning thinking, "Today I will walk away from someone who truly loved me." Instead, their mind became crowded with opinions that didn't belong to them. Someone questioned your intentions. Someone exaggerated your mistakes. Someone took your moments of weakness and turned them into accusations. They heard stories that sounded believable because lies mixed with small pieces of truth are often the most convincing. Slowly, doubt replaced trust. Fear replaced understanding. Assumptions replaced honest conversations. Instead of asking you for clarity, they accepted someone else's version of your life. Instead of listening to the person who stood beside them, they listened to people who stood outside the relationship. And by the time they made their decision, they weren't reacting to the real you anymore. They were reacting to a character created by manipulation. Let me tell you something that many people never realize until it's too late. People who are manipulated often believe they are acting wisely. They convince themselves they are protecting their peace. They think they are escaping danger. They believe they have uncovered hidden truths. But manipulation creates confidence without evidence. It makes people feel certain about things they have never truly examined. That's why your ex may have walked away with complete confidence, believing they had made the right choice. They thought they had figured you out. They believed the accusations. They trusted the rumors. They accepted the false narrative because it was repeated often enough to sound like reality. But here's what manipulation can never do. It can never permanently silence the truth. Truth has a strange way of surviving every attack against it. It may be buried for a season, but it is never destroyed. Lies demand constant maintenance. Every lie needs another lie to support it. Every false accusation requires another excuse. Every deception becomes harder to maintain as time passes. Eventually, the cracks begin to show. The stories stop matching. The manipulator forgets what they previously said. Contradictions appear. Hidden motives become visible. The mask begins to fall. And when that happens, the person who was manipulated starts asking questions they never thought to ask before. Imagine your ex sitting alone one evening, replaying old memories. They begin remembering the kindness you showed them when nobody else did. They remember the sacrifices you made without asking for recognition. They remember the patience you displayed during difficult times. Suddenly, those memories don't fit the story they were told. If you were truly the villain, why were you always the one trying to fix problems instead of creating them? If you were truly dishonest, why were your actions consistently proving your loyalty? If you were truly selfish, why did you give so much of yourself to make the relationship work? Those questions become impossible to ignore. One realization leads to another. They begin noticing the behavior of the people who influence them. The same individuals who claim to care about them start revealing jealousy, control, or selfish intentions. They begin recognizing patterns they were blind to before. The advice they once trusted now feels manipulative. The warnings they once believed now sound exaggerated. They slowly understand that they weren't being guided toward the truth. They were being guided away from it. And that's one of life's hardest lessons. Not every person who gives advice wants what's best for you. Some people give advice because they benefit from your confusion. Some people enjoy separating strong relationships because healthy love reminds them of what they don't have. Others simply crave control. They don't want two people solving problems together because division gives them influence. As long as they remain the loudest voice, they control the direction of someone else's decisions. That's why you should never underestimate the damage that outside voices can cause when someone stops thinking independently. Now, I know some of you listening today have blamed yourselves for what happened. You've replayed every conversation in your mind. You've asked yourself if you should have explained more, loved harder, apologized sooner, or fought longer. But let me encourage you today. Don't carry responsibility for someone else's unwillingness to seek the whole truth. Healthy relationships are built on communication, not assumptions. Trust grows through honest conversations, not through gossip. If someone chooses other people's opinions over direct conversations with you, that decision belongs to them, not to you. Your worth was never determined by someone else's misunderstanding. Your character didn't change because someone believed a lie. Your heart didn't become less genuine because someone failed to recognize its value. Sometimes, the greatest tragedy isn't losing a relationship. It's watching someone lose the ability to recognize what was real because they became trapped in someone else's illusion. But here's the beautiful part of your story. While they were believing lies, you were becoming stronger. While they were questioning your character, life was building your resilience. While they were walking away, you were learning lessons that would prepare you for a healthier future. Pain has a way of producing wisdom when you refuse to let bitterness take over. Instead of becoming consumed by revenge, you learned self-respect. Instead of chasing someone who misunderstood you, you began rebuilding yourself. Instead of begging to be believed, you discovered that the truth doesn't need desperate defense. It only needs time. And time reveals everything. One day, whether it's months or years later, the truth finds its way into every hidden corner. The conversations they once trusted begin making less sense. The people they defended expose their real intentions. Reality speaks louder than rumors ever could. And in that quiet moment of realization, your ex understands something they never expected. The person they doubted was actually the one who cared the most. That realization is painful because it cannot erase the past. It cannot undo the betrayal. It cannot restore lost trust overnight. It cannot bring back opportunities that were carelessly thrown away. And while they wrestle with that reality, you have already taken steps toward a new chapter. You no longer need to convince anyone of your value because you've learned something far more important, that the opinions of manipulated people cannot define the truth about who you are. Your integrity remains intact, your kindness still matters, your purpose continues forward. And the greatest victory isn't watching someone regret losing you. The greatest victory is knowing that you never allowed someone else's deception to turn you into someone you were never meant to become. Keep walking with confidence because lies may influence people for a season, but truth always has the final word. There comes a moment in many people's lives that is more painful than the mistake itself. It is the moment when they finally understand the full weight of what they have done. At first, your ex may have felt relief after walking away. They may have believed they made the right decision. They may have convinced themselves that leaving you was necessary, that listening to others was wise, and that the chapter was closed forever. They carried confidence because they believed the story they had been told. But confidence built on deception never lasts. Eventually, reality begins to interrupt every false belief. The excitement of a new beginning fades. The voices that once influenced them become quieter. The distractions disappear. And when silence arrives, so does reflection. It is in those quiet moments that the truth becomes impossible to escape. Have you ever noticed that time has a way of exposing what emotions try to hide? In the heat of confusion, people often make permanent decisions based on temporary feelings. They react instead of reflecting. They assume instead of asking. They judge instead of understanding. But time slows everything down. It removes the noise. It gives people the opportunity to compare what they believed with what actually happened. That is when your ex may have started remembering things they had ignored before. They remembered how you stood by them during difficult seasons. They remembered the conversations where you encouraged them to believe in themselves. They remembered the countless times you chose peace instead of conflict, patience instead of anger, and loyalty instead of selfishness. Those memories refuse to disappear because genuine love leaves fingerprints on the heart that cannot simply be erased. As those memories returned, another realization began to grow. They started comparing you with the people they chose to trust instead. Suddenly, they noticed the difference. The people who claimed to care often disappeared when things became difficult. The people who encouraged the breakup were nowhere to be found when loneliness arrived. The voices that once sounded convincing offered no comfort when regret settled in. That is one of life's greatest ironies. The people who influence your decisions are rarely the ones who carry the consequences. They speak their opinions, walk away, and continue living their own lives, while you are left carrying the weight of choices you can never fully undo. Imagine sitting alone one evening, looking through old memories, realizing that someone you once took for granted was actually one of the most genuine people who ever entered your life. Imagine understanding that the arguments you believed were exaggerated, the accusations you accepted were incomplete, and the fears you acted upon were carefully planted by someone else's agenda. That realization doesn't simply hurt, it transforms the way a person sees themselves. Regret is not just sadness about losing someone. Regret is recognizing that you became the reason you lost something valuable. Many people believe punishment always comes through dramatic events. They imagine public embarrassment, financial loss, or obvious consequences. But sometimes the greatest punishment is internal. It is waking up every morning knowing you cannot change the decision that changed everything. It is understanding that you hurt someone who never deserved it. It is realizing that your pride kept you from asking questions, your fear kept you from trusting, and your impatience kept you from discovering the truth before it was too late. There is no courtroom more powerful than a guilty conscience. There is no prison more exhausting than living with memories of opportunities that will never return. Some of you listening today are hoping that one day your ex will finally understand your value. And perhaps they will, perhaps they already do. But listen carefully. Whether they realize it today, tomorrow, or years from now, your healing cannot depend on their awakening. If you pause your life waiting for someone else's realization, you hand them control over your future. You deserve better than that. Your purpose is too important to remain trapped in yesterday's heartbreak. The moment someone walked away from your life was not the moment your life lost its meaning. It was simply the beginning of a new chapter that you could not yet see. While your ex was slowly discovering the truth, something remarkable was happening inside you. Every painful experience was building strength. Every lonely night was teaching resilience. Every tear was washing away dependence on someone else's approval. You began learning lessons that comfort could never teach. You discovered that your identity is not based on who stays or who leaves. It is based on your character, your integrity, and your ability to keep moving forward, even when your heart feels broken. That is why your greatest victory is not seeing them regret their decision. Your greatest victory is becoming someone who no longer needs that regret to feel valuable. Healing begins the day you stop measuring your worth by another person's ability to recognize it. You stop asking, "Why didn't they choose me?" and begin asking, "What incredible future is waiting for me now?" That single shift changes everything. Instead of looking backward with bitterness, you begin walking forward with confidence. Instead of carrying anger, you carry wisdom. Instead of chasing explanations, you embrace peace. One day your ex may hear about your growth. They may see your confidence, your success, your inner peace, and the life you built after the heartbreak. They may realize that the person they underestimated became stronger because of the pain they caused. But understand this clearly. That transformation did not happen to impress them. It happened because you refused to let betrayal define your destiny. You chose growth over resentment. You chose forgiveness over bitterness. You chose purpose over despair. Life has an incredible way of restoring those who refuse to quit. The same storm that tried to break you became the training ground that strengthened you. The rejection that once made you question your value became the reason you discovered your true worth. What felt like an ending became the doorway to a future greater than anything you imagined. And perhaps the most powerful truth of all is this: sometimes people realize your value only after they no longer have access to it. They finally understand your loyalty after they experience betrayal from others. They finally appreciate your honesty after they encounter deception. They finally miss your peace after living in constant chaos. But by then, life has already moved forward. Time does not pause while people figure out their mistakes. So if you're listening today with a heart that still carries scars, don't spend another day waiting for someone else's regret to complete your healing. Let your peace come from knowing you gave your best. Let your confidence come from the truth that your character remained intact even when others misunderstood you. Let your future be built on hope instead of heartbreak. Because the greatest comeback is not making someone wish they had never left. The greatest comeback is becoming so strong, so peaceful, and so deeply rooted in your purpose that whether they regret it or not, no longer changes the direction of your life. When that day arrives, you will finally understand that the greatest loss was never yours. It was theirs. They lost someone who loved with sincerity, stood with loyalty, and believed in them even when life was difficult. You, on the other hand, gained something far more valuable. You gained wisdom, strength, self-respect, and the unshakable confidence to walk into your future, knowing that what is truly meant for you will never require you to beg to be seen, believed, or valued.